STEM to Stern, the video panel series from the Pharma Navigator, where expert panels will delve into pertinent industry topics in more detail. During each of these peer-to-peer forums, we'll navigate the full life cycle of biopharmaceutical innovation. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for this next instalment of From STEM to Stern. I'm Felicity Thomas and I'm the Associate Director of Editorial and Content for the Pharma Navigator, and I will be the host for today's discussion. For this episode, which is focused on the new frontier in outsourcing, I am joined by Mark Santos from Fujifilm Biotechnologies, Mike Shearer from Wilmington Pharmatech, and Mark McDonald from Codis. Mark Santos is the Vice President of Commercial Development at Fujifilm Biotechnologies, where he is responsible for leading and supporting the biologics commercial teams. Prior to his role at Fujifilm, Mark held senior positions at Lonza and worked at PwC's Pharmaceutical and Life Sciences R&D group. Mark's 20-plus year career has been focused in the pharmaceutical industry across a variety of roles that have allowed him to foster his curiosity and drive for excellence. Mike Shearer is the Chief Commercial Officer at Wilmington Pharmatech. Mike has been in the CDMO space for 25 years and has managed global business development and proposal teams for over a decade. Most of Mike's experience is in API micronization, drug product, formulation development, manufacturing, and clinical supply services. Mark McDonald is the Technical Sales Director for Codis. Mark is a chartered chemical engineer with over 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry across CDMO and big pharma enterprises. He has extensive experience in technical roles across the UK, Europe, and the US, spanning engineering, safety, and project management, and has led operational teams in a GMP environment. Thanks very much for joining me today, everyone. It's great to have you on. So we're going to be looking at the pharmaceutical outsourcing landscape today. When evaluating that in the modern day, how are the shifting macroeconomic pressures redefining what biopharma companies are prioritizing when it comes to their CDMO or CRO selection? We'll go over to you, Mark Santos, first, please.
So in today's landscape, our partners are seeing economic challenges such as inflation and geopolitical uncertainty, which is forcing them to reevaluate manufacturing strategies and specifically CDMO partnerships. This has led to sponsors to focus on ways to de-risk, such as finding CDMO partners that can offer local for local supply chain capacity. And what we're really seeing and what that means in this space is that compared to the past, we're seeing a lot more strategic and integrated partnerships than we may have before. This transactional approach to the supplier that you're working with may be something that introduces new risks that are too high for your program and the patients that you may be supporting to take. We're looking for customers to be more integrated into the supply chain. We're seeing the market shift from let's get this finished and let's do this to we want an extension of our own capacity. We want to have a more long-term agreement and a portfolio-based approach to how we do business. We're also recognizing that depending on the molecule and the phase that the customer is in with that program, we are seeing a much more phase-specific needs and focus. There are different needs for customers in a phase 1 program versus a phase 3. And with these geopolitical climates that we're seeing today, those programs have different risk profiles associated with them. And the market is looking for a dynamic response. Sometimes they want more local, sometimes it's about speed, and sometimes it's about confidence with the first regulatory group that you're going to get approval with. Again, the science-driven solutions of the past, where we're focused on how do we get creative and how do we understand a lot of the details about the product early on, are moving towards a more solution driven. How do we make sure that we're getting towards the patients? Companies are looking for the output and they're looking for somebody trusted to be able to deliver that output. Quality has been considered something that's always been fundamental in our space, and today it's becoming something that's still there, but it's expected, and across all suppliers and all aspects of CDMO management, customers are expecting, regardless of where you are in the world, that is going to be delivered, and it's something that can be expected. Global risk management, especially when we get into phase three, we're seeing a lot of customers ask the question of where is my supply chain going to be located? How are taxes, tariffs, other types of local supply chain needs going to be managed? And am I going to need a distributed model or a more centralized model to be able to manage those things? Again, integrated solutions. Molecules are getting much more complex than they were in the past. So there's different elements of the supply chain and production required. And as a result of that, people are asking themselves, how much complexity can I manage? And as we're seeing more biotechs get to launch and a very different geopolitical environment, what we're understanding is that these integrated solutions and a global footprint are really important for the entire industry today. And again, that speaks to this increasing molecule complexity. Customers are still expecting that there's going to be scientific expertise that can support the nuances of their program and their product that they're trying to deliver. And having the support not only at one site, but at a global footprint, and having a network of teams and experts at your disposal is something that everyone is looking for, and our market is needing more and more support for as this complexity increases.
Mike?
So thanks for the question. In this environment, efficiency becomes especially important. Your ability to deliver on budget and keeping costs down, not only through operational efficiencies, but also with the ability to do things right the first time and meet development milestones, becomes absolutely critical. Any delay on delivery dates or any blown budgets could result in the death of a promising future medicine and significant trouble for the innovator. Wilmington Pharmatech, or WPT, has a very entrepreneurial culture that is focused on solving complex chemistry problems with both speed and agility, with technical expertise that dates back to our DuPont Merck roots. We pride ourselves on being able to hit aggressive client timelines consistently. We also don't have the large corporate cost bases that the much bigger CDMOs need to cover, which gives us much more flexibility as well to deliver.
When we look at early stage discovery and scale up, historically, the West has relied heavily on like globalized capacity. Now, how is the dynamic changing between US-centric partnerships and rest of the world alliances, particularly seeing as how we've got this kind of maturation of highly efficient biotech hubs within the Asian markets? Mike, we'll go with you first.
So historically, innovators were launching primarily lower volume specialty and orphan medicines, which were often from a single manufacturing location before possibly adding another one after launch. Now, with the geopolitical and supply chain challenges in abundance, most innovators are looking at regional manufacturing strategies with US for US, Europe for Europe, and Asia for Asia supply chains. WPT, with our state-of-the-art API and high-potent API campus in Delaware, is having a lot of discussions about US reshoring options with multiple clients, as well as using our flexible hybrid N-1 model with our Suzhou, China research site. This has turned into a real competitive differentiator for us, and the industry has certainly taken notice.
Mark Santos?
The world is certainly evolving very fast in a much more dynamic way than I think a lot of us predicted 20 years ago. We're seeing a much more globalized approach to not only manufacturing, but also process development and innovation. There's almost everywhere in the world you can go today and find somebody that has a really good solution for being able to take a product through phase one and get the right process development services, analytical development services, and trust to get through that phase one IND on time and with the right level of quality for your patients. And that's great because we're also seeing more diversity in the teams that are looking to take products through various phases in various parts of the world. There are small biotech companies that are saying, hey, this is one of the first times that we've taken a product through. We need some help. They're really looking for a strong partnership and a really strong capability with their CDMO partner in that space to be able to know that journey and to be able to execute for the region and the population of patients they're serving, versus the very large pharma organizations are still asking, how do we help debottleneck some of our clinical research projects so that we can get more access to experts in different regions of the world to support our growth journey. And that dynamic is very exciting because it's also coupled with the third dimension, which is increased product complexity. We have new scientific solutions being created all the time, which are really exciting the market to have unique production needs, unique process development needs, unique analytical needs. And these things are happening at a speed that is really interesting in our space. We're seeing more medicines come to market, more medicines being thought of as a new potential solution early phase. And that is causing the entire globe to ask ourselves, how do we make sure that we support the infrastructure required to be able to support all this exciting innovation that's coming through? The bottom line is that there's just more results and options of who to use, who you can work with, and how you can support different areas of the global market, which is now very diverse and very capable. We're much more phase specific still being made across the network. So phase one customers are still thinking about speed and budget to get through an IND. They want to know that regardless of what the product is, what the molecule is, what their patient population is, they can get fast results to know, is this something that's going to make a difference? And that really matters both to the biotech companies and their investors, but also to the entire industry so that we can focus on the right products that are going to deliver the right solutions for where we're all headed. Phase 3 is about considering BLA, your supply chain security, and confidence in the timeline. That still hasn't changed. And we're still seeing most of the customers look for a phase 3 strategy that is very focused on certain markets and regions they plan to launch out of first. So realizing where is your supply chain going to be located, what regulatory body is going to be your first source of approval, and how are you going to expand into different markets over time becomes an increasingly complex question that is still the forefront of most of these companies and these customers, because this is when the stakes get really high, when most of the products are getting ready to launch. We're seeing new channels to find molecules. So the traditional route, maybe 10, 15 years ago, a lot of large pharma organizations were really the R&D hubs for the industry. And now we're seeing a lot of biotech firms that have emerged that are starting to bring products to market, that are being successful taking them to market. We're seeing different regions of the world start to be developed into true innovation hubs. And that's expanding into a global biotech solution network that is causing innovation to move at a very rapid space, which is super interesting for our industry, because our goal is ultimately to bring more medicines to patients and to solve more of these medicinal problems. The geopolitical uncertainty that has driven demand for phase 3 programs and beyond is again still one of the fundamental questions that most companies are asking. Where you're launching, and you may be launching in multiple regions, it's a question about how do you de-risk these strategic high-value programs to make sure that if you are using a partner for supply, you have the dynamic relationship within a CDMO that can deploy solutions in different regions for different strategies and different growth curves for your program.
Yeah, thanks. Shifting over to the regulatory landscape now, how are changing fast track designations impacting the way biopharma companies structure their risk sharing agreements with CDMOs in order to accelerate those commercial timelines? Mark McDonald, I'll pass this one over to you.
Yeah, I very rarely get asked to do things more slowly. So speed is often of the essence in terms of bringing new compounds through. Regulators, I would say, like CDMOs, are continually driving to improve processes and supporting as well new therapy deliveries to market. It's really critical that as these new compounds are being developed and brought through, that they're able to ultimately get to patients and make a difference. And we see that particularly in serious life-threatening disease cases and unmet need scenarios. So Within the amorphous solid dispersion spray drying space, which is where we operate predominantly, we do see a growing number of therapies falling into these categories, and particularly on the oncology indication side, we've supported a number of compounds ourselves, and those types of products are often recipients of fast track status, or trying to be progressed through the regulatory pathways more quickly. So in this type of scenario, it's really critical, we find, to work closely with our clients and their CMC teams or consultants to fully understand the regulatory approach that is being proposed and adopted and is right for the particular compound. So this is where Codis's flexible approach to meeting client needs is really important. So we have on-site regulatory team support. We're able to work closely with the clients to best leverage our expertise and available tools to align with that selected regulatory approach. So on a practical level, what this could mean is looking at aspects around phase-appropriate analytical method development and verification. So we're only expending effort to get analytical methods to the stage they need to be, and also balancing kind of model-based versus empirical data generation. So this is to support critical parameter analysis and design space setting for processes, but also bearing in mind the target phase, available timing and funds to really try and get that balance right between doing what needs to be done, obviously, to meet the regulatory requirements, but also being quick and flexible and adaptable. So how we see that manifest itself is that risk management discussion really becomes a sharing process with us and the clients, and becomes a key part of the life cycle discussion throughout all of the project activities.
Would you like to add anything, Mark Santos?
Accelerating commercial timelines remains one of the questions we've been asking ourselves in the industry for decades. We saw a very exciting transition in the space during the COVID pandemic, where products got brought to market in a very interesting way that resulted in a speed to patients that was critical in that time period. And as the industry moves and gets more data and experience, it's helping us to be able to leverage that experience to get things moving faster with the same level of quality and predictability that the regulatory markets demand. And we've seen that for phase one. For a lot of the phase one programs in most companies for standard molecules, if you have a standard molecule, you can have a very predictable approach to getting to phase one. And trusting that approach across multiple suppliers, different regions of the world, is fairly given in today's environment. But as you move towards phase three and beyond, there is still a great need to understand how do you manage the regulatory plan and pathway to your approval. And timeline has become a headline within our industry where most people are advertising the timeline, but the science is still mattering. The science is what we produce to give to the regulatory agencies that backs the data that these products have the required information and confidence to be safe and robust to get you through a launch. And with so much diversity in programs, so many new companies that are going through this journey now than we've seen in the past at so many different regions of the world, this diversity is driving an unprecedented amount of new challenges and new thoughts in the space, which is great. It will drive innovation. But we still need to be able to deliver the same level of robustness to those packages and make sure that we have the same level of confidence so that when the product does launch and we do hit that milestone, we're able to have that fast hockey stick style growth curve, which means a lot of patients are getting access to medicine that we're predicting before we get through approval. This diversity is also a dynamic across what kind of designation you have. Fast track programs still need to hit all of the regulatory milestones for success, and companies need to find ways to work with their CDMO partner to talk about how are you going to deliver that data? What's your strategy? And we're really looking for a partnership model, and the industry wants this partnership model where we can say, that every program might need a specific, unique approach, working with the regulatory agencies, working with the supplier of your choice, and asking the question, how do we make sure that maybe there's certain things we're going to do post-approval, there's certain things we're going to do before approval. Sometimes you want to accelerate things to be part of a phase 1 journey versus a phase 3. We'll do it at that part of the clinical life cycle. And that entire strategic development can help you truncate your timeline, specifically on the CDMO part, so that manufacturing doesn't become a bottleneck. Manufacturing bottlenecks are something that, as these timelines get faster and faster, used to be something the industry did not believe was going to be a critical element within delivering their BLA approvals. And now we're seeing more and more that manufacturing actually is one of the critical components on timeline with these faster timelines we're all pursuing. Risk sharing with your CDMO partner is critical, and we see that in a couple different dimensions. It's a dimension of that strategy of how you're going to move through approval and how you're going to plan the different criteria for submission with your CDMO partner from a CMC point of view, but also your business models. With so many different products coming to market today and so much pressure on where the investments are going to be received and who's going to get the funds, companies sometimes need to have a much different approach to booking capacity, getting access to experts, and knowing that they're going to have a scalable global solution post-approval if needed. This is causing a very interesting two-pronged approach within the overall late phase market, where we look at not only how we're going to develop the program for a BLA, the technical solution, but also how do we want to work together? What does partnership mean? Partnership in the past could have meant you're going to have a partner that is ready to build capacity with you. And 20 years ago, sometimes that's what companies did. They shared in building capacity a lot. Today, it's more about using capacity, being smart with resources, having flexible exit strategies, and thinking about your CDMO partnership not only as technical risk sharing, but part of the business risk that you need to manage to get through approval. These types of new environments with the global solutions that are being developed across all of the CDMO solution providers today are helping us all think differently and helping us all start to bring products to market quicker and faster. And from our point of view, this is one of the most exciting spaces that we could be in because it will bring more solutions to patients. And ultimately, that's what we're here for, to help more customers get programs to market.
And Mike?
I mean, the priority is reducing development and funding risk by accelerating the timelines and delivering key data milestones faster. That requires partners who are responsive, can mobilize resources quickly, and bring the technical expertise to execute right the first time while addressing issues in real time, which undoubtedly will come. These capabilities are increasingly what define success in fast-track programs and where WPT is well positioned.
Finally, we're seeing these smaller asset-like virtual biotechs, representing a bigger share of the drug pipeline at the moment. How must CDMOs and CROs evolve their service delivery models in order to support these companies that have high quality science but zero physical infrastructure? Mark Santos, we'll start with you.
So traditional approaches to pipeline development and new innovative products, where we might have seen a small group of organizations really control the majority of the market, have drastically evolved over the past several decades. We are now seeing more and more companies come out as almost virtual teams, where they're able to bring products to market and bring products from the IND stage, potentially all the way through approval stage, in a much leaner approach. As all of the new solutions of technologies take off, as the knowledge gets better, and as the support structure gets better as a CDMO and a CRO, it is possible to outsource a lot more of the raw core production and clinical needs for your programs than has ever been the case in the past. This is great because it will mean that more and more companies will have more and more ideas that they can potentially bring to market, which will ultimately help us get more products to patients and explore more indications in ways that we may have not thought of in the past. So what's going to be very important for the CDMOs and the CROs to think about is when you have these small biotech companies that want to bring things to market in different regions of the world, how are we going to support them? What are the problems and the challenges they'll face as a lean company that the CDMO or CRO need to start to be able to support in a much more holistic space? We think about value chain integration. How do we look at the entire value chain and how do we talk about each step for a product to go from early discovery all the way through launch? And that integrated model is going to be more and more important for companies as we end up with more and more innovation happening in a much leaner way. With AI and some of these other technologies coming out, there could be a scenario in the future where a very lean team can design a lot of products with a very new approach to the science that need people to tactically execute the hands-on science, production, and testing of patients in a way that will be much more dynamic than it has been today. Companies are going to be coming to these solution providers and looking for a true end-to-end solution. And as a CDMO and a CRO, it's going to be important that you can support the diversity of products, the global footprint of demand that's coming as a result of that, and the immaturity of some of those companies and understanding the expertise and the needs of different analytical capabilities, process development capabilities, regulatory needs, and including that full solution package into the day-to-day for the CDMO and the CRO as part of their core offering is going to be instrumental to supporting these companies and ultimately will help more of these companies be successful in bringing their products to market and patients.
And Mike?
Absolutely. So as more complex molecules advance without biotechs building their own infrastructure, CDMOs need flexible assets, strong financial backing, and partnership models that deliver tailored solutions. So from custom suites to plant setups and dedicated facilities, WPT is actively exploring all these options with innovative US companies and ones that are looking for reshoring options. The demand is very clear from them. They need partners with a footprint, speed, and technical expertise to execute.
And last but not least, Mark McDonald.
Yeah, so in recent years, we've seen the smaller sort of asset-light virtual biotechs that you mentioned have really occupied an increasingly important space in advancing new therapies, and often they can adopt a more agile and fast-paced approach to progressing lead candidates to the clinic. So aside from working with established large pharmaceutical providers on commercial products, at Codis, we still maintain that flexible approach to meeting client needs. And that's been really critical in our experience working successfully with some of the smaller enterprises at earlier product development phases to make sure we're able to adapt to some of the unique challenges that might be faced. So with a long established background in the industry from development through to commercial supply, we have extensive internal experience, which can be drawn on to support some of the smaller clients, which may not have that internal resource. And in addition, we have a significant on-site capability. So you mentioned, asset light or zero infrastructure enterprises. So being able to work with a partner that has that full capability available. So not just the manufacturing process, but also storage and distribution, analytical testing and release, stability study and management, among other things. That broad capability helps to cover off the key aspects of client requirements and minimize some of the burden that might be experienced by smaller or virtual enterprises. And the final key point really we see is where CDMOs are adapting is that flexibility in supply scheduling. So clinical programs don't always go to plan, and there are often adjustments that need to be made throughout a program. And I think with the breadth of assets that we have available at Codis, we've been able to be really quite adaptable and flexible to those changing timelines. And we always endeavor to take an understanding approach, I would tend to say, in these scenarios, so that we're being sensitive to those specific needs of the smaller clients, but also really building a long-term mutually beneficial relationship, keeping the clients at the center of what we do.
Thanks again to the expert panellists participating in this episode of From STEM to Stern. Mark Santos, Mike Shearer, and Mark MacDonald for the great discussion. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll look forward to welcoming you to the next instalment of our panel discussion series. You've been watching From STEM to Stern from the Farmer Navigator, the essential video panel series for drug development and manufacturing professionals. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can also visit thefarmernavigator.com for even more expert analysis. Join us next time on From STEM to Stern.